Hey, what's up, everyone? Scotty Shaw, day 9, 40 days of K. And the word is communication. It's one of the fingers on Coach K's fist. So it's the third one we're going over. We already had care, collective responsibility, and communication. Then later on, we'll have pride and then trust. And if you haven't noticed by now, the whole book goes alphabetically. So it'll be a while before we get to pride and trust. In fact, I think pride is day 33. Trust is day 38. So, yeah, it's going to be 24 days before we get to Pride. And, in fact, it'll be almost done with the quarantine by then. A week away, 8 days away, basically, April 22nd, something like that. So, I think the big thing about communication, effective teamwork begins and ends with communication. I really believe that. Of course, one big struggle I have is a lot of communication I'm trying to do has to be online or over the phone. And it's one thing if I'm talking and hearing someone's tone, their pitch, their voice, to some degree I can decipher, when they say, I'm not sure if we can do that. What do they mean by that? Do they just mean, yeah, they're just not sure? Or do they just mean, you know, is it allowed? Or sometimes they have reasons for not, they don't want to bring up reasons, but, if it's, if I don't hear it in their voice and stuff, I'm not sure what they mean. It's just, oh, we haven't done it. Well, okay, what does that mean? And one of the big things that Coach K says in communication, you have to ask two critical questions. How do we talk to one another, and how do we listen? And it makes a lot of sense because in communication you have a sender and a receiver. And if the receiver doesn't know what the sender meant, doesn't understand, then what was the point? But then if the sender, puts out the message and the receiver ignores it, you end up with problems there as well. And I think one of the big problems or not one, but some of the big problems are, stuff that cause problems in communication today is, it's one thing to send a quick text, really, just, hey, what time can you get on a call, or where are we meeting, or I'm going to be a couple minutes late. And that's fine. But I think when people start to have conversations on text, especially with me, that's when I just say, let's just get on a call. And I've had people tell me, nah, this takes too much time. We just spent 30 minutes texting something that could have been done in a 5-minute call. And now you're wasting my time because you just want to respond when you're available to text back, which is very frequent, so you're free this whole 30 minutes. I want to get it done. And, I know sometimes people are not in a situation where they can take a call, but it's just one of those situations where I would rather they just say, I can't take a call, it's a bad time, but I'm free to text. Okay, great. Now I know, what's more priority for me? Have an efficient conversation, get it done, so let's wait, have a 5-minute call, or I need to do this conversation now. Okay, fine, we'll text. And then, we hear about the infamous read, no reply, stuff like that. And, of course, it's not like every waking moment we're thinking about, am I a team or not, or part of a team or not. And then, even then, there's so much more than just putting words out. And, I feel like there's going to be a lot for me to talk about with this one, but Coach K says, communication does not always occur naturally, even among a tight-knit group of individuals. Communication must be taught and practiced in order to bring everyone together as one. So even on a team, where everyone loves each other, trusts each other, cares for each other, they might not be able to communicate well because they have to practice. They have to learn it. They have to practice it. And if you think of it like teaching, if someone teaches, someone has to learn it. It's not just you're a bad teacher. It's also are you, you know, not just if you're a good or bad teacher, but also are you a good or bad student. Definitely, there are situations where it weighs more heavily in one direction. Someone's such a bad teacher that the student just can't understand, or a teacher doesn't care. Sometimes it's just the student who doesn't care. But um, to some degree, there's always someone, one of the two, or both the two, plays some role. So something I really like that Coach K does, he says the team has one rule regarding communication. When you talk to one another, you look each other in the eye. And he goes on to say eye contact is an important act of mutual respect, but also enforces the most crucial element of communicating, telling the truth. And I've definitely noticed when I'm talking in person, even just hearing their voice, I'm much better at telling the truth. When it's just written, you know, on Facebook or texting, I really struggle because I start to overthink things, and I think part of it is my thought process moves more at the speed of talking. But if I'm on Facebook, then by the time I'm done typing, I would have thought of what I would say usually, and then I've gone on to think about, well, what does it really mean to the receiver? And maybe I need to say this, say that. I can't make use of tone, body language, stuff like that. And I'm not necessarily the best communicator, but I really agree with Coach K. Face-to-face communication and truth should serve as the basis of all team communication. He goes on to mention, there's 3 systems that the coaching staff tries to instill at Duke, offense, defense, communication. And, I think to get to the point of caring and believing in each other, being able to have the camaraderie, that pride, to break down pressure. A lot of these individual relationships really do depend on trust, being able to tell the truth, being able to receive the truth, and a lot of that really, really does depend on communication. And I think people who grew up with texting and stuff like that, they're much better at telling the truth on that. Where for me, it just doesn't make much sense for me. I mean, it's already hard enough. A lot of times people don't even tell the truth in person. But, I think that's the thing. Other than the offense and defense, learning the X's and O's, they also, the basketball team also learns how to speak, in the heat of a game, right? The language they speak, it's not the same as what we would use in everyday practice. And I think Coach K or someone once said that the communication they use is it's a lot of one syllable words. They'll contract someone's name. For example, Javin DeLaurier, one of our captains this past year. It's Javin DeLaurier, right? 6 syllables. Pretty sure they just call him Jav on the court. It's much faster, get the words out. So if he's dribbling and someone's behind him on his right side, they can say Jav behind, and now he knows in 3 syllables. All right, I've been dribbling on my right hand with my right hand. Someone's coming from behind, switch my left hand, and it's much faster than, hey Javin, there's someone behind you to the right. And it's also especially important to call screens in basketball, and it baffles me when people just don't communicate in basketball. Teammates and stuff, and they just yell at each other and make mistakes. You know, why don't you box out? Why don't you do this and that? Well, why don't you call out so that person knows that there's a screen coming? When you're yelling at him for not boxing out, well, he couldn't see someone's coming. Yeah, he needs to box out too, but why not communicate? You know, I feel like a lot of people they just play basketball. Finding a real basketball player, that's tough. A lot of people just, honestly, most people just suck at communicating. you know, and communication is where you build that teamwork and camaraderie. So, even for Coach K, having the coaching staff, that helps him with communicating because, especially now, he's 73 now. The problem for him is how does he communicate with players like Zion, who by I think junior year of high school or something had 1 million followers on Instagram. Coach K didn't grow up with all this tech stuff. I've heard he has a Twitter account that obviously it's a secret one, so he can talk to his players and all that. But for the longest time, he said, "Why would I get one?" And he's adapted, he's learned, but he doesn't do that stuff on his own. In fact, there was an ESPN commercial where he tries to text emojis to his former players, and his grandsons have to do it for him. He can't figure it out, and then his players don't understand what he's texting to them. But the main thing is he learned to adapt. At the same time, he built up his coaching staff with former players who know his communication style, but because they're younger, they also understand how to communicate with today's players, at least to a higher degree than Coach K does. And then obviously relying on his captains as well. They're not always the best players, and especially in the one and done era, but having captains that can tell him, hey, we need to communicate better, or this is the right way to say this message. It really gets the word across effectively. And so he says, my staff often helps to bridge the communication gap that can exist between generations. And, just with anything, having that communication gap is really, really difficult. And the bottom line on communication is that everyone on a team should feel comfortable expressing themselves. The freedom to express oneself to other members of a team, business, or family breeds a sense of ownership. And most importantly, each member of the team knows that when we look each other in the eye and communicate, we are honest. That type of communication can help to turn a group of individuals into a true team. And it's no secret I miss having teammates. I miss having a real team. This is how life is. You don't always go around having the team you want, and it's really hard to build that kind of a relationship. And that's why, for Coach K, having his assistant coaches, his captains, is important. And the story he uses here is he once gave a speech, a motivational speech, before practice. And he felt like it was the best speech ever. But he didn't get the response he expected, the big, surge of excitement. They just kind of jogged onto the court, just started practice like normal. So, in a way, Coach K kind of looking for a compliment. He asked his assistant coach. This one was Steve Wojo, and how do you think it went? And just honestly, Wojo replied, "Coach, I don't think they understood anything you said." And natural reaction. Coach K was just mad. He was angry. He felt like it was his best speech ever. It's on the level of Dr. King, Abraham Lincoln. And he realized, well, Wojo was being honest. So the problem is, I gave a great speech, but no one received it. I sent it, but no one received it. It didn't really understand it. And it's just like in a basketball game. If I yell, "Javin, someone's coming up from behind," he might not understand all that because things happen so quickly. I I need to send it quick, jab behind. And he knows, all right, someone's coming from behind. Screen left, screen right, clear. Stuff like that. You got to call these things quick. And for Coach K, he realized, okay, maybe I don't have to be short all the time, but in this case, everyone come here, sit down in the bleachers, ask if they understand it. And Shane Battier, one of the team captains, stepped up and said, no, coach, we didn't understand. So in about 30 seconds, Coach K summarized this 15-minute speech and then said, told Shane, hey, if that happens again, if everyone just doesn't understand me, I need to know right away. I need immediate communication. So Shane said, got it, coach, let's start practice. And that's the type of communication he wants on the team. And, honestly, I would say probably everyone wants on their team. Everyone can express themselves and no one feels stifled. Because when you're trying to get stuff done, you don't have time trying to figure out why isn't this happening. You got to know right away the message wasn't received the way it was sent. And, Coach K closes out saying, that rare but essential brand of communication turns a group of individuals with different backgrounds, talents, and ideas into a unit that can effectively talk and listen, both on and off the court. And I definitely, in person, when I hear a voice, I'm able to communicate so much better. I definitely struggle when it's online and stuff. I can't make everyone communicate, by voice or in person. But I think I definitely noticed that when I'm able to build bonds with people on a team or as friends or just whatever it is, it's usually because I'm able to get to the point of, we're able to trust what each other is saying. And I think it's very unfortunate that in today's society, a lot of times we rely on how well do you text with each other to determine are you good friends. Because I cannot think of a single person that I'm close with and trust that I can't think of a single person like that in my life that we primarily text. Our relationships always started with something in person, or at least at some point led to something meaningful, or at least by voice. For example, one of my best friends who's actually a Tar Heel fan, we met because we had lined up early for Star Wars. But, well, he got there after work thinking he'd be the first, except I had been there for, double the time already. And, we didn't really reconnect for a while and then, started playing ball. And it was really interesting because we could always go back to that first thing we did together, doing something stupid, waiting for hours and hours and hours for a movie just to be, first in. And, we do text a lot, but that's because we have this foundation of having talked to each other, done stuff together. And, I have friends who, some that I used to call frequently and I would never hear back. And over time, all I would get back is a text and stuff. And eventually, it just gets to be too cumbersome. It's just not worth it anymore. On one hand, there's so many typos. I have no idea what they're saying. I get sick of it. And then, I feel like the conversation's going nowhere because I text something simple. I get YouTube video back in reply, or, it's just, what? I just don't have time and energy to deal with that. I'm running a company. I'm trying to do so many things. And if this were in person, I could build this relationship just in a 10-minute conversation. I don't even need that long of a conversation. Just got to hear your voice, know you're doing okay, hear from you. But, after a while, when I'm always the one initiating and I don't hear back, and then Sometimes I just get a text saying, "Oh, hey, sorry, I missed your call. What's up?" All right, I guess that's it. There's no energy behind it. And after a while, yeah, it's texting, Facebook messages, Twitter, Instagram messages. It just doesn't work. You know, for me, that's where I'm really struggling the past several weeks or a few weeks, I guess. I'm going to struggle for the next 4 weeks. Is a lot of my communication will still be text and Facebook just by default. And how am I supposed to get to know people? How am I supposed to build relationships when everything is, just by text? A lot of my good friends from Duke, we might not talk for a while, but generally we have things we can fall back on. So we've had these conversations, we've had these experiences, we've been teammates in some way, and it's a very different situation where I can text something to someone and not know for a while if they got it because they forgot to reply or they just didn't think it's worth replying. Well, if I say it to you in person, you would at least, indicate you heard it or something, or you're just terrible at communicating apparently. So you got to grow up and learn that stuff. I did. You guys got to learn too. You know, Same thing that happened when I was younger. People were telling me you got to learn how to communicate better. I was told in high school I have terrible body language. Maybe I did. Maybe I was just not conveying things honestly, but I was giving it away with my body language. I don't know. But the fact is, now that I'm very clear for me communicating, I need to do it in person. It needs to be, at least by voice. And it can't simply just be, I know why you're having this conversation because you're trying to trap me or something. You tell me this conversation that we're going to have is this when I'm busy. It better be about that. I don't want to get on a call when I'm thinking it's about these three things, but then you're talking about some fourth thing. Then suddenly it's like, well, why did I get on this call? I'm busy. These are the three things I need to hear about. That fourth thing, I don't care about. Or if I call, I get a text back. Yeah, if you're busy, you got a good reason, let me know. But after a while, it really does turn into, all right, apparently it's not worth it with this person because if I'm playing basketball, I call screens and you don't call screens for me. After a while, why should I play hard defense? I could get hurt running into a screen, blindsided. Why should I call screens for you? And if you want the ball on offense, you can't just stand there silently. You got to indicate. People whistle, whoop, yell. Even better is when they call it wing, corner. That way someone knows you're there. They don't even have to look. Someone who knows basketball, a basketball player, when they hear you call wing, they just know where the wing is. They can just throw it out that way. Corner, throw it that way. They don't have to worry about, oh, I heard corner, which wing. If I'm going this way and you call corner, then, your worth is back there. You're definitely in that corner across. So I know cut in, pass it that way, And I think that's the thing. A lot of people learn how to communicate in different ways, and that's okay. But definitely a lot of friendship and camaraderie and team spirit is built on being able to communicate and being able to send and receive and know the other person, the other people, they'll put in their efforts to send and receive with you. Because unfortunately, a lot of relationships I just don't have time for because I'm busy with work. I'm busy with, trying to build my own name, build my own future, build the life I want. And if it's going to be just a lot of, read no reply, or I sent something and I ask a quick question, I get a YouTube video back, or I ask, oh, how come this happened, and you just tell me to Google it. All right, well, apparently you're telling me that you're not even worth talking to on you're worth less than Google or YouTube. My time and energy I should just spend not talking to you, because why talk to you when I can just go to YouTube or Google for the same answers, when what I'm looking for is that connection. Why did you know, why do it this way? I don't want to hear about why most would do it. I want to hear your experience. I want to hear your stories. So, whoever watched this 7,000 years from now, best I can say is really just, if you feel lonely, you feel disconnected from people, learn how to communicate. Reach out to others and say, hey, I need you to reach out to me as well. And if they're not going to do it, it sucks, but you're going to have to cut them, you know, cut them from your life, because at some point you got to get up and do your stuff in your life. You can't spend your time just worrying about, who's going to reply or not. And, when people tell you, yeah, I'm going to do something, and you don't know if they're going to do it, at some point, maybe they're just not worth the time and energy anymore, Because if you tell yourself you're going to do something, you don't do it for yourself, and you look back with regret. I don't know what to tell you, man. Your past self failed you, just like that person, as opposed to a past person, that person today failed you because they didn't communicate with you, didn't tell you they need help or they need a deadline or an extension. It was just, they told you something, left you hanging. So, that's the problem we have to deal with. People rely too much on convenience for communication and forget that there is a massive drop off in efficiency and effectiveness, because communication cannot just rely on convenience. Think about it. Good, fast, cheap. Pick two out of the three, and at best you can get those two. Because sometimes good, fast, cheap, you're only getting one, sometimes none. That's just how it is. Communication, same thing. If you want good and fast communication, you got to train. You can't just go for cheap and efficient. And I promise you, your relationships will get better. You will start to value even more the ones you have. You're going to realize that they're growing even better. And the ones that they just want to be fast and cheap, or just fast or just cheap, all right, that's the quality of the relationship you're going to have. But if it's going to be good communication, that's the quality of the relationship you're going to have. So, when Coach K talks about personal relationships, being built, and you got to communicate. When Shane is his captain and can tell him, Coach, we didn't get it. When Wojo can say, I don't think they understood anything, Coach K is now able to go back and say to everyone, this is what I meant. Now let's go have a great practice. Let's go practice perfect, because perfect practice makes perfect. Practice does not make perfect. It just instills the habits. But if you have perfect practice, that's what makes perfect. And the pursuit of it, excellence, you don't just achieve it because it happens. There's always effort behind this. And I know this is a much longer video. It's not just because communication is one of the longer essays here. It's 4 pages, where commitment, the last time 2 pages, but the main thing is communication is just so important. No one wants to be the one feeling like life is a big group project where everyone lets you down because of communication problems, whether it's from themselves or someone else or the whole world. What they want to feel like is we're part of a team, not they let me down, but we're a team. We are a team. And that kind of camaraderie, brotherhood, trust, care, belief, there's a lot of things, the passion, the trust, the pride, it all comes from having those personal relationships. And communication is a big part of building that. And it's not just the things you say and send, it's also what you receive, how you receive it, the content you send. So, I really want to encourage everyone, whoever watches this, all half of you, definitely communication is so important. learn how to send and receive better. And we'll talk about courage tomorrow. It's a big part of this, but definitely communication is so important. So commit to doing better with communication with your teammates, with those you want to grow closer with. Definitely have courage, and we'll talk about courage tomorrow. But for now, just remember communication. Communication, just focus on improving that, and that will help you build your courage. So, yeah, tomorrow, day 10, 40 days of K, word will be courage. So, take it easy, everyone.